It is quite a sight to see so many of you here, the collection of the people who meant the most to Donovan, and I want to thank you for being here. My friend Donovan Jock was born May 13th, 1974, and he was truly an extraordinary person. He and I met early in high school, but for much of high school we were only acquaintances. It wasn't until 1992, my junior year, that we ended up seeing a movie together. It was a Sylvester Stallone comedy, and it was so bad. And believe it or not, our dislike of that movie brought us together. We had this common ground. We'd been through something terrible together. And I remember we stood in the parking lot of the theater afterwards for about an hour laughing and talking. And when I left, Donovan was no longer an acquaintance. He was a friend. I had no idea then the kind of impact that Donovan would have on my life. At the beginning, I knew him as a guy who would talk me into trading out my Dell for an Apple. As someone who always carried a Leatherman with him. Always. I think he showered with a Leatherman. As someone who was convinced that Hummers never, ever got stuck. Until he got one stuck. But there was so much more, as you know, to Donovan than just his quirks. Being friends with Donovan changed my life. I remember hearing Donovan talk to a group of high school students 10 years ago, and what he said to them was this. He said, if you want to find a good friend, what you need to do is you need to be a good friend. And Donovan, in every way, was a good friend. He was full of integrity, character, courage. He was the kind of person who did not just say that he cared, he actually did care. And throughout the years of my friendship with Donovan encouraged me. Sometimes he really challenged me. And even to this day, he has been an example to me. Donovan was an extraordinary person. And Donovan could have done just about anything he wanted to do with his life. He had everything that would have been needed to live comfortably. Donovan was bright, he was articulate, he was insightful, he had skills in life that were incredibly marketable, he had intellect, he had drive. Donovan could have easily achieved the American dream and then some. Why did he live the life that he did? What would drive a man to leave his family, a family like you, and his friends, uproot his life, leave the comforts of home, and move halfway around the world to an unfamiliar place with an unfamiliar language, entirely unfamiliar people? Why did Donovan have such a powerful impact on all of us? Why are you here today? And why are we so sad to see him go? Well, with his permission and also with his encouragement, I wanted to share with you just a small part of his story. You see, to understand Donovan, you must understand that the person that he was at the end of his life was not the person he was at the beginning of his life. I mean, Donovan was a great kid, for sure. He was a very strong-willed kid, as you might imagine. He did things his own way. As a boy, he was always on the move. He knew what he wanted. He was not afraid to challenge the system, and he liked to argue. On top of all that, Donovan was very intelligent. In fact, his mother, Holly, told me that one time the two of them were in an argument when he was young, and Donovan said, "You know I'm right, Mom. I'm smarter than you." But as a teenager, some of those traits caught up with him. In junior high and high school, Donovan had a need to be the best at everything. He was driven with his grades, he was driven in debate team, he was driven with track and cross country. He had to be on the top of the class, and he put tremendous pressure on himself in every way and felt the weight of that all the time. And out of that, Donovan began to grow more and more angry, and unhappy. He could be abrasive and hard to live with. And it caused a lot of hurt in his relationships and a lot of deep pain to Donovan. Around 1992, Donovan's senior year of high school, things really came to a head. And Donovan came to meet with one of the pastors at Grace Church, where we both attended down the road. You'll hear from that pastor later, Steve. What happened in that meeting was Steve opened up the Bible and he showed Donovan 8 words that changed his life. They were 8 words from Psalm 46, and they were this: "Be still and know that I am God." Up to that point, Donovan had thought that the Christian faith was what he was supposed to do for God. And Donovan, being a perfectionist, knew that he was failing at it badly. You see, to him, just like school and sports, Christianity was another pressure, was another responsibility. And for him, the idea that he could just be still was a thought that had not occurred to him. And when he was still, Donovan said there were 2 things that he realized. First of all, he realized that God loved him. And I mean, he really loved him, flaws and all. Donovan realized that God created him and that God knew all of Donovan's strengths and all of his weaknesses, but he still wanted him. That was so impacting for Donovan. The other thing he realized was that the Christian faith was not really about what he had to do for God, but it was about what God had done for him. That Jesus, the Son of God, had come to earth to rescue him. And that he had given his life to pay the bill for all of Donovan's mistakes. Donovan didn't have to do it because Jesus did. And so Donovan could just be still. Donovan could just rest. And Donovan could trust what God had already done. What Donovan would tell you that he found during that time of life is that he found grace. Grace is when you get what you don't deserve. You get something that you cannot explain. You get something that feels to you like it's too good to be true. And that is exactly what it was for Donovan. He really believed that he was forgiven and that he was free and that God loved him and that he was secure in every way. And that God had made him not just a follower, but a son. And the Bible teaches that God's grace through Christ is the most precious gift in all the world. And to understand Donovan, you must understand he believed that. He believed that with every bit of his heart. And everything that he did with his life from that point on was a response to that grace. Donovan graduated from Lakeland High School in 1992. His picture is outside in that hallway. He went to study at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, graduated from there. And he was hoping after college to take a short trip to Albania to work with a church there. But almost by chance, or perhaps by providence, he ended up in Bosnia instead. And his life was changed again. He developed a heart for that people group and that culture, and within Donovan grew this desire to see the people of Bosnia experience the same thing that he had experienced years ago: grace. And so he decided to go there and help start churches, and he aimed his entire life in that direction. Now, about that time, there was another person who became interested in Bosnia. Her name was Jocelyn Moritas. And Donovan invited her and some other people to be a part of a week-long trip that he would take to Bosnia. And Jocelyn went. I asked her why she went on that trip, and she said, well, first of all, because she was interested in starting churches too, but also because she thought Donovan was cute. I think it might have been the other way around. Donovan felt the same. They fell in love and were married on August 19th of the year 2000. And Donovan viewed Jocelyn as the second greatest gift he had ever been given besides grace. And God knew that Donovan would need Jocelyn. And did he ever? One of the last things that Donovan told me was that he felt that he had married better than he ever deserved. And even to the end of his life, Jocelyn loved him so faithfully and sacrificially and devotedly. And Joss, for all of us who love Donovan so much, we thank you for that with all of our hearts. On September 1st, 2001, 10 days before the 9/11 attacks, our church sent Donovan and Jocelyn to Bosnia. And it was the dream of our church to send them, and it was their dream to go. But at the airport, there were so many tears. They spent 13 years there, returning home for short visits after months and sometimes years. And the work that they did there was very difficult. And it didn't often have the result that they had hoped for, but they were so faithful. And as you heard and will hear, God used them in incredible ways. In 2008, they came home for an extended season for a very important reason. Nathan. The adoption process at that time when they returned moved very slowly, much more slowly than they had expected, and time was running out for them in the States because they needed to get back to Bosnia so that they could renew their visa status. And I remember asking Donovan, I said to him, you know, you're in kind of a predicament. What are you going to do if you have to go back? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, no matter what happens, I am not leaving without him. Nathan is my son. And Nathan was adopted on September 28th of that year. Early the next year, March 14th, 2009, Adrian would come along. And Adrian, again, was such a special blessing to Donovan and Jocelyn. And boys, I would just say to you something I hope you know, that your father loved you so much, and he was so proud of you. He is so proud of you. And so are all of us. This past March, the Jocks returned home. Donovan was diagnosed with cancer, and Donovan was never concerned about his own death. He always said, I know where I'm going. But Donovan was very concerned for everyone else, especially Joss and the boys. And he was so deeply touched by the love that was shown to him, first of all from his family and his extended family, who stepped up to the plate in every way. His friends, his church, even people that he had never met. God truly saw his friends and his family and his church and so many of you as an answer to his prayers for his family. And during that time, what Donovan learned even more fully was those first 8 words that started out at the beginning of his life. To be still and to know that I am God. He learned that he could trust God in death just like he could trust him in life. During the time before Donovan passed away, towards the end, my wife visited him with me. And my wife happened to ask him what his favorite movie was. And Donovan thought about that for a few minutes, and he said, I couldn't pick one, I have 3. Shawshank Redemption, Life is Beautiful, and Beauty and the Beast, the Disney cartoon. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. He just seemed like too manly of a man to watch like Beauty and the Beast. And I asked him, why Beauty and the Beast? And to my wife and I, he gave us an explanation of the movie. He said, Beauty and the Beast is about a beast who lived alone in a great castle, and he was angry and bitter. And Donovan said, none of the villagers understood him. They never once thought about who the beast was or where he came from. They just feared him and they judged him. But there was someone who didn't. There was someone who saw past all of that and loved him in spite of who he was. And that love and that grace took hold of the beast and embraced him. And it was that love that changed the beast into a prince. And I believe Donovan loved that movie so much because he felt that that was the story of his life. And that was the story that he lived to tell. Donovan saw himself as a very flawed person. But God gave Donovan grace, like he offers to all of us. And Donovan loved him for it. Donovan Jock went to be with his Heavenly Father just before sunrise on September 12th, 2013. He will be missed terribly, but now he's home, and now he's safe, and now he has seen Jesus face to face. Jocelyn said after Donovan passed away that she thought the first thing that he would do would be a redeemed Michael Jackson dance. And maybe this will give you a little taste of that.